BTS. Back in April this year, BTS was blatantly talked about in a racist and xenophobic way. It was a group of Chilean actors that tried to bring them down with bad words. In a sketch comedy segment belonging to the Chilean TV series Mi Barrio, this group had pretended to be the ridiculous version of BTS by wearing a bunch of colorful wigs and eccentric costumes. For some reason, they decided that it wasn't yet to be enough as a humiliation to the group. So for some icing on the cake, these Chilean actors also made jokes about Korean language and hinted that the act was associated with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
Preséntense uno a uno. Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-2, Kim Jong-3, Kim Jong-4, Juan Carlos.
Soon after this segment was aired, ARMY right off the bat rallied up on social media to protest how racist the attitude of these actors was. Within hours, the hashtag #RacismIsNotComedy started trending online. And to prove how these Chileans were messing with the wrong people, ARMYs also filed a formal complaint against the broadcaster, since they didn't act quickly enough to handle the mess they created. What's even worse is that the broadcaster just responded in a sarcastic way, saying that the only criticism collected from K-pop fans was how overweight the actors were, so they would just work on that. Plus, they even promised there would soon be another episode, and hoped people would stay tuned because it's going to be way funnier than this one. So with such responses, they would certainly keep up with this attitude and never issue a proper apology to BTS, right? Well, the answer is yes and no. Firstly, under the fierce pressure of ARMY, the Chilean broadcaster did issue a statement to acknowledge the mistake and promised to not let such things happen again. However, the so-called apology post was also deemed to be just for show and unacceptably insincere, because in the statement, they didn't say a word of sorry to either BTS nor ARMY, and instead, everything written there was about thanking people for the heat, promising to be more entertaining and how they would work harder to contribute to the industry. Also, for this stubborn attitude, this post had even gained more hate from people, and some believe that with such dirty tricks to draw attention, the show could never take off well and achieve a bit of what BTS did. BTS's V and Jungkook, EXO Sehun, and Kang Daniel. Somehow, BTS in general, and certain members in particular, were always the bullseye of questionable criticisms. Since back in January of 2018, besides EXO Sehun and Kang Daniel, V and Jungkook were also dragged into this mess, despite having literally broken multiple records in the West. While even a little kid nowadays is already educated about how the definition of beauty is diverse, and varies depending on culture to culture, blatant insults and condescending words were still spitted out by several hosts of the pretty well-known Greek program Eftihita. Things all started after this TV show brought up the ranks of T.C. Candler's 100 Most Handsome Men in the World, and blatantly discussed in front of thousands of viewers that they found K-pop idols undeserving to be included in the list. The first victim was Sehun, aka the visual that was widely recognized as the finest of the fine in SM entertainment. Kicking off by saying that his face looked terrible, the host went on with things like how he had such an Asian facial structure, looked too Chinese, and the red hair looked absurd on him.
Λέγεται ο νεαρός αυτός. Κινέζος, έχει έτσι ασιατικά χαρακτηριστικά. Ναι. Τώρα δεν ξέρουμε ακριβώς ποιοι ψηφίζουν.
Τα μαλλιά κόκκινα, είναι χάλια. Καθόλου δεν μ' αρέσει, φαντάζομαι είναι όλο το πακέτο μετράει.
Ναι.
Then it was Kang Daniel, the national center, to be put on the scale. After questioning his gender and implying that the thick makeup look made him look like less of a man, the host continued to go the extra mile and flagrantly claimed someone had misplaced him on the wrong list, and his position should have been on that of the women.
Αυτός είναι άντρα. Ναι, ρε παιδιά.
Περνάνε στη λίστα.
Είναι γυναίκα, είστε σίγουροι.
Αντίστοιχη.
Είναι άντρας.
So V and Jungkook should receive somewhat less fierce criticism, because in 2018, BTS had already established quite a stable position in the entertainment industry of the West, right? Surprisingly, the answer is a big no, since the host even mocked V's fans for having terrible eyesight when voting for him.
Για μένα είναι γυναίκα αυτό που βλέπω, δεν.
Ναι, αλλά τον ψήφισαν τον νεότερο άντρα, την πεντάδα.
Δεν βλέπουν καλά μάλλον, δεν ξέρω.
Μήπως το πιστεύεις ότι υπάρχουν γυναίκες που τον ψηφίζουν στο νούμερο 5 αυτό. Ελάτε λίγο.
And as to Jungkook, they started the tale as old as time about how all Asian people look the same. And he apparently didn't deserve the second spot on the list.
Ναι, είναι τραγουδιστής. Είναι τραγουδιστής. Το έψαξα γι' αυτόν γιατί μου έκανε φοβερή εντύπωση που στο 2. Γι' αυτό κόλλησα.
Υπάρχουν και Κορεάτες που είναι ωραίοι.
Ναι.
Αυτοί είναι αντικειμενικά άσχημοι.
Το θέμα είναι ότι δεν τους βλέπουμε στη λίστα με τους ωραιότερους όμως. Εδώ είναι το θέμα μας.
Για να πάω το όνομα.
Blackpink's Jisoo. For some reason, fans of K-pop always feel off when it comes to their idols' interviews abroad. And by that, it means besides ARMY's, Blinks had also felt uneasy with the way Jimmy Kimmel pulled an alleged sarcastic joke on Jisoo back in 2020. However, the array of opinions towards this matter was heavily polarized, Because while many blinks thought that the MC was implicitly mocking Jisoo right in front of thousands of viewers, others believed he was being more considerate and thoughtful. So what exactly had happened in the interview? Back in 2020, when Blackpink sat down for an interview with the late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel, the whole thing started off quite well, where he attempted to speak Korean and quickly switched to English for the rest of the show. Things after that also went smoothly, as the girls comfortably answered questions about their lives in the band, until one moment where Kimmel addressed Jisoo, telling her that she was not speaking English as much as the other members, and proceeded to ask her what her favorite English word was.
I was told that Jisoo doesn't speak as much English as the rest of you. Jisoo, what is your favorite word in English?
Soon after the episode was uploaded on YouTube, Kimmel immediately received backlash from blinks, because he was implicitly pulling a stereotype on Jisoo that Asian people didn't speak fluent English. And in case they did, they would receive compliments as if speaking the language was some kind of talent, or skills that people outside English-spoken countries honorably had. Not only that, many also felt it kind of painful to hear such an awkward question from Kimmel, and believed he should have done more research on the girls instead of scratching on the surface, repeating about the Coachella thing while Blackpink had just released their first ever album, and a whole documentary on Netflix. However, there were many people who believed that some blinks were overreacting, since this question was completely normal, and objectively speaking, the girls were enjoying themselves a lot during the whole interview. There was even an opinion saying that Kimmel was actually being quite considerate and careful to include all the girls. But because of his regular dad jokes, and that the US interview in nature was quite shallow and more like a mutual exchange for ratings, people should stop overanalyzing and being uptight about such a lighthearted thing. EXID's Jungkook. As all these mocking things happen quite frequently with internationally famous names like BTS and Blackpink, apparently there was zero possibility that the Western host would treat the rest of K-pop idols more politely. And yes, that was exactly what happened to Jungkook when EXID had a performance at Los Angeles back in 2015. When the girls were having a small interview with TMZ's reporters at the airport, the whole thing was recorded and broadcast on TV afterward. However, instead of showing anything fun, the editors at TMZ just straight up published a clip showing a reporter mocking Jungkook's accent, when saying "I'm happy," which was also welcomed by a bunch of humiliating reactions from people around that. The worst thing was that when an Asian American employee spoke up to defend Jungkook, implying she was actually quite good at comprehending, another Western girl there immediately clapped back and questioned where her fellow was born, which was also a kind of mocking, "Are you defending her because you're Asian who used to speak poor English?" This incident was so messed up that even FX's Amber had to take it on Twitter, criticized TMS for their childish actions, and believed all Americans facepalm for having such personalities representing themselves on TV. Even 2PM's Taekyeon and Roy Kim also voiced how rude the actions of TMZ was. And on YouTube, people also criticized the hilarious logic of these reporters. Netizens also pointed out how funny the common sense of people that supported these actions was, by saying, "People in America get discriminated all the time, and racist is a common thing in this country anyway," and believed that America would never get to be as diverse as they claimed as long as these people still exist. So, except for this blatant mock pulled on Jungkook, do you think fans were overreacting in other cases? Or were the hosts at fault? Let me know your thoughts by commenting down below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to BeBoss TV because more intriguing videos are waiting for you ahead. Thank you for watching.